The research shuttle bucked and rolled like a wild animal as Lisa Morrison fought with the controls. Red warning lights flashed across the small cockpit while alarms screamed in her ears. The planet below looked peaceful from space, with its green forests and blue rivers, but now those same trees were rushing up to meet her at deadly speed. Lisa had been a xenobiologist for 12 years and had visited 47 different worlds, but she had never been in a crash like this. The shuttle's main engine had failed during what should have been a simple survey mission. She was supposed to collect plant samples and soil specimens from this unnamed world and return to the USS Frontier in 6 hours. Now she would be lucky to survive the next 6 minutes. The trees grew larger in the viewport. Lisa could see individual branches and leaves now. She pulled back on the stick and fired the emergency thrusters. The shuttle's nose came up just enough to turn a deadly nosedive into a brutal belly landing. She crashed through the forest canopy in a shower of broken branches and torn metal. The impact threw Lisa forward against her restraints hard enough to crack 2 ribs and break her left leg. Pain shot through her body like lightning, but she was alive. The shuttle's hull had split open along one side, and forest air rushed in carrying the smell of pine and earth. Lisa's instruments were dead and smoke rose from several control panels. She tried to stand, but her broken leg collapsed under her weight. Lisa fell back into the pilot's seat and took stock of her situation. The shuttle's emergency beacon was flashing, but she had no way to know if the signal was getting through the planet's atmosphere. Her supplies included 3 days of food and water, plus a basic medical kit and survival gear. Most importantly, she had her plasma cutter for collecting samples and her sidearm in case of dangerous wildlife. Lisa splinted her leg with pieces of the broken control panel and wrapped it with medical tape. The pain was terrible, but the bone seemed stable enough for her to walk if she was careful. She gathered her supplies into a backpack and activated the emergency locator in case rescue teams found the crash site. Then she climbed out of the ruined shuttle and into an alien world. The forest was unlike anything she had seen before. The trees were similar to earth pines, but their bark was silver, and their needles had a blue-green tint. Strange flowers grew along the ground in patches of bright purple and gold. The air was clean and fresh with just enough oxygen to breathe easily. Small animals that looked like a mix between squirrels and birds chattered in the branches above her head. Lisa hobbled away from the crash site looking for water and shelter. Her broken leg made every step agony, but she forced herself to keep moving. She had crashed in the late afternoon, and darkness would come soon. On an unknown world, night could bring predators or dangerous weather. She needed to find safety before the sun went down. After walking for 2 hours, Lisa heard the sound of running water through the trees. She pushed through a thick patch of ferns and found a clear stream flowing over smooth stones. The water was cold and clean when she tested it with her scanner. Lisa filled her water bottles and followed the stream deeper into the forest looking for a place to make camp. That was when she saw the smoke rising above the trees in the distance. Someone else was on this world and they had fire. Lisa's heart raced with excitement and fear. First contact with a new species was the dream of every xenobiologist, but it could also be deadly if handled wrong. She checked her translator device and made sure her plasma cutter was ready. The smoke led her to a clearing where a small camp had been set up next to the stream. Lisa hid behind a large tree and watched through her binoculars. What she saw made her gasp in surprise. The beings around the campfire looked almost human, but their skin was darker and their hair was black and straight. They wore clothes made from animal skins and their tools looked like something from Earth's past. There were 5 of them sitting around the fire. 3 adults and 2 children. They spoke in a language that sounded familiar, but Lisa could not place it. One of the adults was an older man with gray hair and lines around his eyes. He seemed to be the leader because the others looked to him when making decisions. The women were working with what looked like pottery while the children played with carved wooden toys. Lisa watched them for an hour as darkness fell. They seemed peaceful and their technology was primitive compared to her own. The translator in her ear started picking up words and phrases. Slowly, she began to understand that these people were speaking a language from Earth. Not just any Earth language, but Cherokee. She had studied it in college as part of her xenobiology training. The older man was telling stories to the children about great hunters and brave warriors. The women were preparing food that smelled like roasted meat and wild vegetables. Everything about their culture reminded Lisa of Native American tribes from Earth's history. But how could Cherokee people be living on an alien world, thousands of light years from home? Lisa made a decision that would change her life forever. She stepped out from behind the tree and walked slowly toward their camp. The adults jumped to their feet when they saw her. The older man said something sharp in Cherokee and the others moved the children behind them. Lisa held up her empty hands to show she meant no harm. She spoke slowly in Cherokee using words she remembered from her studies. She told them she was alone and hurt and asked for help. The older man's eyes widened when he heard his own language coming from this strange pale woman with yellow hair. He spoke quickly to the others and they had a heated discussion while Lisa stood at the edge of their firelight. Finally, the older man approached her carefully. He spoke in Cherokee asking who she was and where she came from. Lisa tried to explain that she was from Earth, but her Cherokee was not good enough for such a complex conversation. She showed them her broken leg and pointed to herself, saying the Cherokee word for hurt. One of the women came forward with water and clean cloth. She examined Lisa's leg and spoke to the older man. Lisa understood enough to know the woman was some kind of healer. The older man made a decision and gestured for Lisa to sit by their fire. The woman began cleaning and rebandaging Lisa's broken leg while the others watched with curious eyes. Lisa had found sanctuary with people who should not exist on this alien world. She did not know that her presence would soon bring danger to these peaceful Cherokee, or that saving one of their children would earn her the loyalty of an entire tribe. For now she was just a wounded stranger who had been shown kindness by people far from their ancestral home. The fire crackled and the stars came out overhead as Lisa Morrison began the adventure that would change two worlds forever. Lisa woke up to the sound of birds singing in the forest canopy above. The Cherokee camp was already busy with morning activities. The older man she had met the night before was named Chief Standing Bear, and he spoke enough broken English to communicate with her. The healer woman was called Mary Crow, and she had done an excellent job fixing Lisa's broken leg. Standing Bear explained, through gestures and simple words, that their village was a day's walk through the forest. Lisa was welcome to come with them, but the journey would be hard on her injured leg. She insisted she was strong enough to make the trip, because staying alone in the wilderness seemed more dangerous than traveling with these mysterious Cherokee people. The group packed their camp and started walking along a forest trail that only they could see. Lisa struggled to keep up even with a walking stick that one of the children had made for her. Her leg throbbed with every step, but she gritted her teeth and pushed forward. The Cherokee moved through the forest like they were part of it, knowing exactly where to step and which branches to avoid. After several hours of walking, they stopped to rest beside a mountain stream. The water was crystal clear and Lisa could see fish swimming in the deeper pools. Mary Crow gathered plants along the stream bank and explained in broken English that they were medicine for pain. She made Lisa chew on the bitter roots, and within minutes the agony in her leg faded to a dull ache. Standing Bear's grandson, Little Wolf, was about 8 years old with bright, curious eyes and a quick smile. He had been fascinated by Lisa since she arrived at their camp. He asked her questions in Cherokee that she could barely understand, and showed her interesting rocks and plants along the trail. Lisa tried to answer in her broken Cherokee, which made the boy laugh with delight. The afternoon sun was getting low when they reached a steep hillside covered with thick bushes and fallen logs. Standing Bear held up his hand for everyone to stop and listen. The forest had gone quiet except for the sound of wind in the trees. Even the birds had stopped singing. Lisa felt a chill run down her spine because she knew that silence in nature usually meant danger. Little Wolf had wandered ahead while the adults were talking. He was climbing over a fallen tree when Lisa heard a deep growling sound from the bushes nearby. A massive creature emerged from the shadows, moving toward the boy with deadly purpose. It looked like a grizzly bear, but it was larger than any bear Lisa had ever seen, with silver fur and long curved claws. The boy froze in terror as the beast reared up on its hind legs, towering above him. It was easily 9 feet tall, with muscles rippling under its thick fur. Standing Bear shouted a warning and reached for his bow, but the creature was too close to Little Wolf. The boy would be dead before anyone could reach him. Lisa acted without thinking. She pulled out her plasma cutter and limped toward the bear as fast as her broken leg would allow. The device was designed for cutting rock samples, but it could slice through almost any material. She cranked the power to maximum and fired a brilliant blue beam at the creature's shoulder. The plasma beam burned through the bear's fur and into its flesh, causing it to roar in pain and anger. It dropped to all fours and spun toward Lisa with murder in its small dark eyes. She fired again, hitting it in the chest, but the beast kept coming. Its massive paws could crush her skull like an egg, and its claws were sharp as knives. Little Wolf scrambled away from the wounded animal and ran toward his grandfather. The bear focused all its rage on Lisa, who stood her ground despite her fear. She fired the plasma cutter again and again, burning deep cuts across the creature's hide. The smell of burned fur and flesh filled the air, along with the beast's terrible roars. Standing Bear and the other Cherokee men arrived with their weapons, but they held back because Lisa was directly in the line of fire. The bear charged toward her, covering the distance in seconds. Lisa dove to one side, landing hard on her injured leg and crying out in pain. The creature's claws missed her head by inches and gouged deep scratches in the tree behind her. Lisa rolled over and fired the plasma cutter one more time, aiming for the bear's head. The blue beam struck it between the eyes, and the massive creature collapsed to the ground, twitching once before going still. Smoke rose from the burned flesh on its face and chest. The forest fell silent again, except for Lisa's heavy breathing and Little Wolf's quiet sobbing. Standing Bear rushed to check on his grandson while Mary Crow helped Lisa to her feet. The boy was shaken but unharmed thanks to Lisa's quick action. Standing Bear examined the dead bear and spoke rapidly in Cherokee to the other men. Lisa understood enough to know he was impressed by the weapon that had killed such a dangerous predator. Little Wolf broke away from his grandfather and ran to Lisa, throwing his small arms around her waist. He spoke in Cherokee, calling her something that sounded like brave woman. Tears ran down his face, but he was smiling at the same time. Lisa hugged him back, feeling a strange connection to this child from another world. Mary Crow examined Lisa's leg, which had been injured again in the fight with the bear. She made fresh bandages from plant fibers and spoke soothing words in Cherokee while she worked. Standing Bear approached Lisa with something like wonder in his eyes. He spoke slowly in English, saying that she had saved his grandson's life and that made her family to their tribe. The Cherokee concept of family was broader than most cultures. Anyone who showed great courage or kindness could be adopted into the tribe as a brother or sister. By saving Little Wolf from the bear, Lisa had created a bond that could never be broken. Standing Bear placed his hand on her shoulder and spoke the Cherokee words that made her an honorary member of their people. The group continued their journey toward the village, but now Lisa was not just a stranger they were helping. She was Little Wolf's protector and Standing Bear's daughter. The other Cherokee looked at her with new respect, and Mary Crow walked beside her, offering support when the trail became difficult. As darkness fell, they reached the edge of a large valley hidden deep in the mountains. Lisa could see lights twinkling through the trees and smoke rising from many cooking fires. The Cherokee village was larger than she had expected, with dozens of buildings arranged around a central plaza. It looked like something from Earth's past, but Lisa was beginning to suspect that appearances could be deceiving. Standing Bear led them down a winding path toward the village, while Little Wolf chattered excitedly beside Lisa. He was telling everyone they met about the brave woman who had killed the great bear to save his life. Word of her deed spread quickly through the village, and people came out of their homes to see this strange, pale woman with the powerful weapon. Lisa limped through the village, feeling dozens of eyes watching her every move. Some faces showed curiosity, while others displayed suspicion or fear. She was clearly not Cherokee, and her technology was far beyond anything they possessed. But Little Wolf's enthusiastic praise and Standing Bear's protection kept anyone from challenging her presence. They stopped in front of a large building that seemed to be Standing Bear's home. The chief spoke to his family in rapid Cherokee, explaining what had happened in the forest. An elderly woman, who was clearly Little Wolf's grandmother, embraced Lisa with tears in her eyes. She spoke the Cherokee words for thank you over and over while holding Lisa's hands. Mary Crow prepared a meal of roasted meat and vegetables while the family gathered around Lisa, asking questions about her strange appearance and powerful weapons. She tried to explain that she came from far away, but the Cherokee words for space and other planets did not seem to exist. They understood that she was from beyond their world, but the details were too complex for simple conversation. Standing Bear announced to his family that Lisa was now part of their tribe and would be protected as one of their own. Little Wolf climbed into her lap and fell asleep against her shoulder, while the adults continued talking late into the night. Lisa realized that saving one boy from a bear had changed her life in ways she could never have imagined. She had come to this world as a scientist, studying alien life, but now she was becoming part of that life herself. Lisa spent her first week in the Cherokee village learning to navigate the complex social structure of her new family. Standing Bear's home was built from living wood that had been shaped rather than cut, and the walls seemed to breathe with the rhythm of the forest. Mary Crow showed her how the Cherokee had learned to work with nature instead of against it, creating technology that appeared primitive but was actually far more advanced than it seemed. The village healer taught Lisa about medicines made from local plants that could heal wounds faster than any drug Lisa knew from Earth. Mary Crow's knowledge came from generations of Cherokee wisdom mixed with discoveries made on this alien world. She showed Lisa flowers that glowed in the dark and roots that could stop bleeding instantly. The Cherokee had been living on this planet for many years and had learned to use its gifts. Little Wolf followed Lisa everywhere, asking endless questions about her home among the stars. She taught him simple English words while he helped her learn Cherokee. The boy was incredibly smart and seemed to understand concepts that most children would find difficult. Lisa began to suspect that the Cherokee people on this world were more than just survivors of some ancient migration. Jack Hawk was the village's head warrior, and he made no secret of his distrust for Lisa. He was tall and strong with scars from many battles and eyes that missed nothing. Jack spoke excellent English, which surprised Lisa, until she realized that many of the Cherokee had learned languages from other worlds during their long exile. He questioned her constantly about her weapons and her ship, trying to determine if she posed a threat to his people. Lisa answered his questions honestly, explaining that she was a scientist, not a soldier. She showed him her equipment and explained how the plasma cutter worked. Jack examined her tools with the eye of someone who understood advanced technology, even if he chose not to use it himself. His suspicion began to fade when he saw that Lisa's weapons were designed for research, not warfare. The turning point came when Lisa shared her knowledge of Cherokee history from Earth. She told stories that Standing Bear's grandfather had told him as a child. She spoke of great chiefs like Sequoia and John Ross and the Trail of Tears that had driven the Cherokee from their ancestral lands. She knew songs and ceremonies that the village elders remembered from their oldest stories. Standing Bear called a council meeting to hear Lisa's tales of their homeland. The entire village gathered in the Great Hall as Lisa spoke in broken Cherokee about the mountains of North Carolina and Tennessee. She described the ancient Cherokee capital at New Echota and the 7 clans that made up their nation. Many of the villagers wept as she told stories they had never heard, but somehow recognized as true. An ancient woman named Grandmother Willow stood up during Lisa's presentation. She was over 90 years old and remembered stories from the first Cherokee who had come to this world. She spoke in the old language, telling how Star People had taken her great-great-grandmother from Earth many generations ago. The Cherokee had been brought to this world as slaves, but they had outlived their captors and made it their home. Lisa realized she was looking at the descendants of Cherokee people who had been abducted from Earth sometime in the 1800s. They had maintained their culture and language across centuries and light years of space, but they had also adapted to their new world, developing technology that blended Cherokee wisdom with alien science. They were still Cherokee, but they had become something more. Mary Crow showed Lisa the village's true nature during a midnight tour of the hidden facilities. What looked like simple wooden buildings were actually grown from modified trees that served as living computers. The Cherokee had learned to program plant DNA to create organic technology that was invisible to most scanners. Their weapons grew on bushes, and their tools were carved from special woods that were harder than steel. The village's defense systems were based on the forest itself. Trees could move to block paths or create barriers. Vines could entangle enemies, while flowers released chemical signals to coordinate responses across miles of wilderness. The Cherokee had turned the entire valley into a living fortress that could respond to threats with the intelligence of a supercomputer and the flexibility of nature. Lisa learned that she was not the first human to find the Cherokee village, but she was the first to be accepted as family. Other humans had crashed on the planet over the years, but most had been quietly relocated to other areas to preserve the Cherokee secret. A few had been allowed to trade with the village, but none had been trusted with the knowledge of their true capabilities. Standing Bear explained that the Cherokee had been hiding from the Star People who had originally brought them to this world. Those aliens were long dead, but their enemies still hunted through the galaxy, looking for lost colonies to enslave. The Cherokee had survived by appearing primitive while secretly developing weapons and defenses that could surprise any invader. Jack Hawk began teaching Lisa the Cherokee way of warfare, which combined ancient tactics with futuristic weapons. He showed her how to use living arrows that could change direction in flight and track moving targets. He taught her to fight with knives made from crystallized tree sap that could cut through almost any armor. Most importantly, he showed her how to think like a Cherokee warrior using patience and cunning instead of brute force. Lisa's broken leg healed faster than should have been possible thanks to Mary Crow's treatments. The Cherokee medicine worked by accelerating the body's natural healing processes while preventing infection and reducing pain. Within 2 weeks, Lisa was walking normally, and within a month she was keeping up with Cherokee hunting, parties on long trips through the forest. Little Wolf became her constant companion on these expeditions, teaching her to read the signs of the forest and move without making sound. The boy had inherited his grandfather's wisdom and his father's courage. He was being trained as the next generation of Cherokee leaders, and he insisted that Lisa should learn their ways too. She was his protector, and he was proud to show her the secrets of his people. Peter Raven was the village's tech shaman responsible for maintaining the living computers and organic weapon systems. He was fascinated by Lisa's scientific knowledge and eager to learn about human technology. Peter showed Lisa how Cherokee bioengineering worked by growing a new tool right before her eyes. He started with seeds that had been programmed, with specific genetic instructions, and within hours had produced a cutting implement perfectly suited for her needs. Susan Deer was Peter's apprentice and one of the brightest minds in the village. She was only 16, but she understood the Cherokee biotechnology better than most adults. Susan was working on new defensive systems that would protect the village from orbital attacks. She studied Lisa's plasma cutter and began developing organic weapons that could produce similar energy beams using modified plant cells. The Cherokee Council met every few days to discuss village business, and Lisa was invited to participate as a full member of the tribe. She offered suggestions based on her scientific training, while learning about Cherokee decision-making processes that emphasized consensus and respect for all viewpoints. The council was preparing for challenges they hoped would never come, but they knew their peaceful existence could not last forever. Lisa's presence had already changed the balance in ways no one fully understood. Her crashed shuttle had sent signals into space that might attract unwanted attention. Her knowledge of human technology combined with Cherokee bioengineering was creating new possibilities for both offense and defense. Most importantly, her acceptance into the tribe had created bonds between Cherokee and human cultures that could reshape both civilizations. Standing Bear spoke to Lisa privately about the responsibilities that came with her new status. She was not just a guest or even an adopted daughter. She was a bridge between two peoples who had been separated for generations. The choices she made in the coming days could determine whether that reunion would bring peace or war to both worlds. Lisa understood that saving Little Wolf from the bear had been only the beginning of her journey. She had gained the loyalty of the Cherokee tribe, but with that loyalty came obligations that would test her courage and wisdom in ways she could never have imagined. The peaceful morning in the Cherokee village was shattered by an urgent alarm that sounded like wind chimes mixed with bird calls. Lisa had been working with Susan Deer on a new bioweapon design when the organic alert system activated throughout the valley. Cherokee warriors emerged from their homes carrying weapons that looked like traditional bows and spears, but Lisa now knew were far more deadly than they appeared. Standing Bear rushed to the village's command center, which was hidden inside what looked like an ordinary oak tree. Lisa followed him through a concealed doorway into a room filled with living displays that showed information through patterns of colored light on the walls. The Cherokee had detected something in orbit around their planet, and the readings were not good news for anyone. Peter Raven worked frantically with the biocomputers trying to identify the source of the signals they were receiving. The organic sensors that were spread throughout the forest had picked up energy patterns that matched no known natural phenomenon. Something large and metallic was moving in space above them, scanning the planet's surface with powerful detection equipment. Lisa studied the data displays and felt her blood turn cold. The energy signatures matched descriptions from her xenobiology training of Korthak Empire scout ships. The Korthak were one of the most feared military forces in the known galaxy. They specialized in finding primitive worlds that could be easily conquered and stripped of their resources. The Cherokee had been discovered by their worst possible enemy. Standing Bear gathered the village council in emergency session while warriors took positions throughout the valley. Lisa explained what she knew about the Korthak Empire and their methods of conquest. They would study the planet for several days, identifying population centers and military capabilities. Then they would send an invasion force sized to overwhelm any resistance with minimal effort and casualties on their side. Grandmother Willow spoke in the old language, telling the council about the star people who had first brought the Cherokee to this world. Those original aliens had been fleeing from something they called the Dark Hunters. The Cherokee had never understood what that meant until now. The Korthak Empire was the force that had destroyed their original captors and driven them to hide on this remote world. Mary Crow reported that the forest's biological sensors were detecting more ships arriving in the outer system. The Korthak were bringing a full invasion fleet, which meant they expected serious resistance or valuable prizes on the planet's surface. Lisa's crashed shuttle must have sent out signals that made the Korthak think this world was more advanced than it actually appeared. Jack Hawk wanted to attack the scout ships, immediately using the village's hidden orbital defenses. The Cherokee had weapons that could reach space, but using them would reveal their true capabilities to the Korthak fleet. Standing Bear preferred to remain hidden and hope the invaders would overlook their small valley in the vast wilderness. Both strategies had merit, but also serious risks. Lisa suggested a third option based on her knowledge of Korthak tactics. The Empire always sent ground scouts to verify their orbital surveys before committing to a full invasion. If those scouts could be captured or eliminated without alerting the fleet, the Cherokee might buy time to prepare a proper defense. The key was making any resistance look like random attacks by primitive natives rather than organized military action. The council debated through the night while Korthak ships continued arriving in the system. By dawn, they had 27 vessels in orbit, including several heavy cruisers capable of devastating the planet's surface. The Cherokee faced an enemy that outnumbered them 1,000 to 1 and possessed weapons that could turn their forest home into a wasteland in minutes. Standing Bear made the decision that would define his people's future. The Cherokee would not hide like frightened animals waiting for the Korthak to find them. They would not abandon their sacred valley to preserve their lives. They would stand and fight using every advantage their knowledge of the planet could provide. If they must die, it would be as free Cherokee defending their home. Lisa volunteered to help coordinate the defense using her scientific training and knowledge of human military tactics. She had never been a soldier, but she understood technology and strategy better than most Cherokee. More importantly, she was the bridge between Cherokee wisdom and human methods of warfare. The combination might give them an edge against impossible odds. Peter Raven began activating defense systems that had been dormant for generations. Ancient weapons grown into the forest itself came alive, responding to chemical signals that spread through root networks and airborne pheromones. Trees that had seemed ordinary revealed themselves as artillery platforms, capable of launching projectiles at orbital targets. Vines became communication networks carrying messages faster than electronic systems. Susan Deer worked with her mentor to adapt Cherokee bioweapons for use against Korthak armor and shields. The Empire soldiers wore advanced protective gear that could stop most projectiles and energy beams. But Cherokee weapons used biological agents that could eat through metal and disrupt electronic systems. The young inventor was developing arrows that could carry viruses designed to attack Korthak. Technology. Mary Crow prepared medical stations throughout the valley using plants that could heal wounds and neutralize alien poisons. The Cherokee had encountered Korthak weapons before during their long exile and had developed treatments for their most common effects. She also prepared psychological defenses because the Empire was known to use fear and despair as weapons against their enemies. The village's children were evacuated to hidden caves deep in the mountains while the adults prepared for war. Little Wolf refused to go with the other children, insisting that he should stay and fight beside Lisa, who had saved his life. Standing Bear finally agreed that the boy could remain in the village as a messenger and scout, but only if he promised to avoid direct combat. Jack Hawk organized the Cherokee warriors into small units that could operate independently if the main village was destroyed. Each group had specific targets and objectives that would contribute to the overall defense strategy. They would use hit-and-run tactics to confuse the Korthak while gradually drawing them deeper into the forest where Cherokee advantages were strongest. Lisa worked with the communications team to send a distress signal toward the USS Frontier using Cherokee biotransmitters. That would be hard for the Korthak to detect. She did not know if her ship was still in the system, or if they would receive her message in time to help. But human reinforcements might tip the balance in a battle that the Cherokee could not win alone. The first Korthak scout ships entered the planet's atmosphere 3 days after they had been detected in orbit. They landed in clearings far from the Cherokee Valley and began systematic surveys of the surrounding area. The Empire was being cautious because their sensors had detected unusual energy readings that suggested hidden technology on the planet's surface. Cherokee scouts watched the alien landing sites from concealed positions and reported everything they saw to the village command center. The Korthak troops were heavily armed and armored as expected, but they moved with the confidence of soldiers who had never faced serious resistance. Their arrogance might be turned into a weakness if the Cherokee were clever enough. Standing Bear called Lisa to his private chambers for a final conversation before the battle began. He told her that she had brought both danger and hope to his people. Without her crashed shuttle, the Korthak might never have found them, but without her knowledge and weapons, they would have no chance against the coming invasion. She had become central to their survival in ways that neither of them had expected. Lisa accepted the responsibility that came with her position as the bridge between two worlds. She had saved one Cherokee boy from a bear and gained the loyalty of an entire tribe. Now that loyalty would be tested in a war that would determine whether the Cherokee people had a future on this world or any other, the greatest threat they had ever faced was descending from the stars, and only their combined courage and wisdom could save them. The forest grew quiet as both sides prepared for the conflict that would reshape this corner of the galaxy forever. The War Council meeting lasted through the night as Cherokee leaders and Lisa planned their defense against the Korthak invasion. Maps made from living wood showed every trail and stream in the valley, while biodisplays tracked enemy movements in real time. The Cherokee had turned their entire homeland into a single organism capable of seeing and responding to threats with frightening intelligence. Lisa studied the Korthak battle formations through the forest's sensor network and began developing tactics that combined Cherokee stealth with human military strategy. The Empire's soldiers were trained to fight conventional enemies using overwhelming firepower and advanced technology. They would not expect to face an enemy that could turn trees into weapons and make the ground itself fight against them. Peter Raven showed Lisa the village's most closely guarded secrets as they prepared weapons that had never been used in battle. Deep beneath the forest floor lay a network of root systems that had been growing for centuries. These biological computers could coordinate attacks across hundreds of square miles, while appearing to be nothing more than ordinary plant life. The Cherokee had built a fortress that no enemy could see until it was too late to escape. Susan Deer worked without rest to modify Cherokee bioweapons for use against Korthak armor and shields. She studied samples of alien metal from a crash site that had been found years ago, and developed biological agents that could eat through their protective gear like acid. Her arrows would carry viruses designed specifically to attack Korthak technology, turning their own equipment against them. Jack Hawk taught Lisa advanced Cherokee fighting techniques that emphasized patience and precision over brute force. He showed her how to move through the forest without disturbing a single leaf, and how to strike at an enemy's weak points with surgical accuracy. Most importantly, he taught her to think like prey that had become predator, using an enemy's expectations against them. Colonel Stone Wolf arrived from a neighboring village bringing 50 seasoned warriors and weapons that even Lisa had not seen before. Stone Wolf was Jack Hawk's older brother, and a veteran of battles against other alien invaders who had found Cherokee settlements over the years. He carried scars from energy weapons and cybernetic implants that had been torn from his body in combat. The colonel studied Lisa with eyes that had seen too much death and violence. He spoke perfect English because he had learned it from other human prisoners who had been brought to Cherokee worlds by various alien captors. Stone Wolf understood both human and alien military tactics better than anyone in the valley. His presence gave the Cherokee defenders hope that they might actually survive the coming battle. Lisa worked with Stone Wolf to establish a command structure that could function even if key leaders were killed or captured. They created redundant communication networks using both Cherokee biosystems and salvaged human technology. Every warrior knew multiple fallback positions and alternative objectives in case their original plans were disrupted by enemy action. Mary Crow transformed her healing, sent her into a field hospital capable of treating both Cherokee and human casualties. She had studied alien biology during her years as a healer and knew how to adapt Cherokee medicine to different physiologies. More importantly, she had prepared psychological treatments for warriors who would face the terror of fighting enemies from the stars. The Cherokee children, who had been evacuated to the mountain caves, became part of the intelligence network, carrying messages between distant outposts and gathering information about enemy movements. Little Wolf led a group of young scouts who could move through the forest faster and more quietly than adult warriors. Their job was to watch and report, not to fight, but Lisa knew the boy would find a way to join the battle when it began. Weapons that had been dormant for generations came alive throughout the valley as Peter Raven activated ancient defense systems. Trees that had grown for decades in specific patterns revealed themselves as camouflaged artillery, capable of launching projectiles with devastating accuracy. Flowers that seemed purely decorative began producing chemical weapons that could disorient or poison enemy soldiers. Lisa marveled at the ingenuity of Cherokee bioengineering as she learned to use weapons that were alive and responsive to their wielder's intentions. Her bow grew from a sapling in just 4 hours, and the arrows it fired could change direction in flight to track moving targets. The Cherokee had turned evolution itself into a weapon, creating tools that improved themselves through use. Susan Deere showed Lisa the crown jewel of Cherokee defensive technology, which was a massive network of underground fungal connections that linked every living thing in the valley. This biological internet could coordinate complex actions across vast distances while remaining completely invisible to conventional sensors. The forest itself would fight as a single organism against the Korthak invaders. Training sessions became more intense as the Cherokee warriors prepared for battles they might not survive. Lisa learned to fight alongside Little Wolf, who refused to be left behind despite his youth. The boy had inherited his grandfather's courage and his father's tactical mind. He moved through combat exercises with a grace that came from years of living in harmony. With the forest, Jackhawk and Stonewolf worked together to train new units that could operate behind enemy lines after the main battle was over. These shadow warriors would continue fighting even if the village fell, using guerrilla tactics to make the Korthak occupation as costly as possible. Every Cherokee understood that this battle would determine whether their people survived or joined their ancestors among the stars. The Korthak scout ships began moving closer to the Cherokee Valley as their orbital surveys detected energy signatures that suggested hidden technology. Lisa knew from her xenobiology training that the Empire would not risk a full invasion until their ground forces had confirmed the threat level on the planet's surface. That gave the Cherokee a narrow window of opportunity to eliminate the scouts before reinforcements arrived. Peter Raven and Susan Deere completed work on their most ambitious project, which was a bioweapon capable of reaching orbital targets. The weapon looked like an ordinary tree, but its internal structure was designed to launch organic projectiles with enough velocity to escape the planet's gravity. The Cherokee had built their own space defense system disguised as part of the natural forest. Lisa established contact with the USS Frontier using Cherokee biotransmitters that could send signals without being detected by Korthak sensors. Her ship was still in the outer system conducting surveys of other planets, but Captain Roy Mitchell responded immediately when he received her distress call. The Frontier was not a warship, but it carried enough firepower to make a difference in the coming battle. Standing Bear called the entire village together for a ceremony that honored their ancestors and asked for their blessing in the battles to come. Lisa participated in Cherokee rituals that were thousands of years old, while surrounded by weapons that were beyond anything her own people had imagined. She felt the weight of responsibility for bringing both danger and hope to these remarkable people. The ceremony ended with each warrior making a personal vow to defend their home and protect their families regardless of the cost. Lisa made her own vow in Cherokee words that Little Wolf had taught her, promising to stand with his people until victory or death claimed them all. She had gained the loyalty of an entire tribe by saving one boy from a bear, and now she would honor that bond with her life. Grandmother Willow spoke the final blessing using words from the ancient Cherokee language that had been passed down through generations of exile and hardship. She reminded everyone that they were fighting not just for their own lives, but for the memory of all Cherokee who had died far from their homeland. This battle would determine whether their sacrifices had meaning or whether the Cherokee people would disappear forever from the galaxy. The sun set on the last day of peace. The Cherokee Valley would know for a long time. Tomorrow, the Korthak scouts would reach the outer defenses and the war would begin in earnest. Lisa checked her weapons one final time and said a prayer to whatever gods watched over warriors who fought impossible battles. She had come to this world as a scientist, but she would meet the enemy as a Cherokee daughter defending her adopted home. The forest grew quiet as predators and prey alike sensed the approaching storm that would test the courage and wisdom of everyone who called this valley home. The first Korthak patrol entered Cherokee territory at dawn, moving in standard formation with heavy weapons and scanning equipment. They expected to find primitive natives who would flee at the first sight of alien soldiers. Instead, they walked into a trap that had been growing for 3 centuries as the forest itself prepared to defend its adopted children. Lisa watched from a camouflaged position as the enemy patrol passed, beneath trees that looked ordinary but were actually living weapons waiting for the right moment to strike. The Korthak soldiers wore full armor that could stop most projectiles, and their helmet displays showed them a world they thought they understood. They had no idea they were being studied by intelligence that was older and more patient than their empire. Jackhawk gave the signal to begin the attack using a bird call that seemed natural to any observer. The trees responded first, launching projectiles that struck the Korthak formation with devastating accuracy. The organic ammunition was designed to penetrate their armor at specific, weak points while releasing biological agents that attacked their equipment's electronic systems. The enemy soldiers reacted quickly, calling for air support while returning fire with energy weapons that could burn through solid stone. But their shots struck living wood that could heal itself and redirect their beams back at the attackers. The Cherokee had turned the forest into a mirror that reflected the Korthak's own violence against them. Lisa used her plasma cutter to disable the patrol's communication equipment before they could report the true nature of the resistance they faced. The Empire would expect to lose contact with scout units in dense forest, but they would investigate if they received reports of organized military opposition. Every minute of confusion the Cherokee could create gave them more time to prepare for the main battle. Stone Wolf led his warriors in a flanking attack that cut off the Korthak retreat while Little Wolf and his scouts moved through the trees gathering intelligence about enemy weapons and tactics. The boy had insisted on participating despite the danger, and Lisa had to admit that his small size and natural stealth made him nearly invisible to alien sensors. The first patrol was eliminated within 15 minutes, but Lisa knew their victory was temporary. Orbital scanners would have detected the energy discharges from the battle, and more Korthak forces were already on their way. The Cherokee had announced their presence and their capabilities to an enemy that would not underestimate them. Again, Peter Raven activated the forest's deep defense systems as Korthak dropships began landing throughout the valley. What the aliens thought was empty wilderness came alive with hidden weapons that had been growing in secret for generations. Vines thick as cables burst from the ground to entangle landing craft while trees bent like catapults to hurl boulders at incoming ships. Susan Deer coordinated the biological attacks from her position in the command center, watching as her modified organisms spread through enemy formations. The viruses she had designed specifically for Korthak technology worked better than expected, turning their own weapons against them and overloading their armor's power systems. Cherokee arrows carried death that could think and adapt to whatever protection their enemies used. The Korthak commander responded to the unexpected resistance by calling for orbital bombardment of suspected weapon positions. Energy beams from space turned sections of the forest into flaming craters, but the Cherokee defense network simply rerouted around the damaged areas. Their organic systems could heal and adapt faster than the Empire's soldiers could destroy them. Lisa found herself fighting alongside warriors who moved through the battle like dancers following music only they could hear. The Cherokee had trained for this moment their entire lives, and their coordination was so perfect that they seemed to share a single mind. She struggled to match their rhythm, but gradually began to understand the flow of forest warfare. Mary Crow's healing stations came under direct attack as Korthak forces tried to break Cherokee morale by targeting their medical facilities. The healer defended her patients with weapons that grew from the walls themselves while treating wounds that would have been fatal without her bioengineered medicines. Her determination inspired Cherokee warriors to fight harder than they had ever thought possible. The battle spread throughout the valley as more Korthak ships arrived and disgorged soldiers who had been told this would be an easy conquest. Instead, they found an enemy that could strike from any direction using weapons they could not identify or counter. Trees walked like giant soldiers while flowers released clouds of poison that ate through their protective gear. Standing, Bear coordinated the overall defense from his position on the sacred mountain that overlooked the entire valley. The Cherokee had built their most powerful weapons into the mountain itself, turning it into a fortress that could rain destruction on enemies below. But the Korthak were adapting to Cherokee tactics, and their next assault would be coordinated to overwhelm even the mountain's defenses. Little Wolf brought Lisa urgent intelligence about Korthak battle plans he had overheard while scouting enemy positions. The Empire was preparing to use their heaviest weapons to level the entire forest, regardless of what resources they might destroy. They had decided that conquest was impossible and were switching to a strategy of complete extermination. Lisa realized that the Cherokee could not win a conventional battle against an enemy with such overwhelming firepower. They needed to take the fight to orbit where Korthak ships were vulnerable to surprise attacks. The biocannons that Peter Raven had been building could reach space, but they would need time to charge and aim properly. Stonewolf volunteered to lead a desperate assault on the main Korthak landing site to buy time for the orbital weapons to prepare their strike. He knew it was a suicide mission, but his warriors followed him anyway because they trusted his judgment and shared his commitment to protecting their home. They would die as Cherokee warriors defending everything they held sacred. The assault on the landing site began at sunset, when shadows would hide Cherokee movements from enemy sensors. Stonewolf's force struck with such fury that they overran the Korthak perimeter before the aliens could respond effectively. But Lisa knew the victory would be brief because enemy reinforcements were already moving to trap the attacking force. She made a decision that would haunt her for the rest of her life. Instead of staying with the main Cherokee force, she took Little Wolf and a small group of scouts to capture a Korthak shuttle that could carry them to the enemy fleet in orbit. The boy's knowledge of Cherokee technology combined with her understanding of human systems might give them a chance to disable the Korthak ships from within. The shuttle they captured was damaged but still flight-worthy thanks to Susan Deer's bioviruses that had disrupted its defensive systems without destroying the engines. Lisa had never flown a Korthak vessel, but the controls were similar enough to human designs that she could manage basic operations. Little Wolf helped by interfacing with the ship's computer using Cherokee biotechnology that could communicate with any electronic system. They launched into space as the forest battle reached its climax, with Cherokee and Korthak forces locked in a struggle that would determine the fate of both civilizations. Lisa looked down at the burning valley where she had found family and purpose among people who should not exist. If she failed in her mission, those fires would consume everything and everyone she had learned to love. The Korthak fleet filled the sky above them with ships that carried enough firepower to sterilize entire worlds. Lisa felt the weight of impossible responsibility as she piloted their stolen shuttle toward the enemy command vessel. She was one human and one Cherokee boy against an empire that had conquered half the galaxy, but she had gained the loyalty of an entire tribe by saving Little Wolf from a bear, and that loyalty had given her strength she never knew she possessed. The Cherokee had taught her that courage was not the absence of fear, but the willingness to act despite being afraid. She was terrified, but she was also determined to protect her adopted family no matter what it cost her. The battle for the sacred mountain had become a battle for the future of two species who had found each other across the vast darkness of space. Lisa guided the stolen Korthak shuttle through the enemy fleet, using access codes that Little Wolf had extracted from the ship's computer system. The Cherokee boy's ability to interface with alien technology through his bio-implants was beyond anything Lisa had seen before. He could make electronic systems respond to his thoughts as if they were extensions of his own body. The Korthak command ship loomed before them like a metal mountain bristling with weapons and sensor arrays. Lisa had studied Empire vessel designs during her xenobiology training, but seeing one up close revealed the true scale of their technological superiority. The ship was over 2 kilometers long and carried enough firepower to reduce planets to rubble. Little Wolf worked frantically to maintain their disguise as they approached the command vessel's docking bay. The Cherokee had given him implants that could mimic Korthak biosignatures, fooling enemy sensors into thinking they were returning patrol members. But the deception would not last long once they were inside the ship and facing actual Korthak personnel. The docking bay was filled with shuttles and fighters being prepared for another assault on the Cherokee Valley. Lisa could see through the bay windows that the forest battle was reaching its climax, with fires spreading throughout the trees as both sides committed their final reserves. Standing Bear's mountain fortress was still holding, but she could see orbital bombardment beams beginning to target its defensive positions. Lisa and Little Wolf made their way through the ship's corridors using stolen uniforms and forged identification that the boy had programmed into their captured shuttle. The Korthak crew members they passed showed no suspicion because they were focused on the ground battle and confident that no enemy could penetrate their orbital defenses. Their destination was the ship's main reactor, which powered not only the vessel's weapons but also the communication arrays that coordinated the entire fleet. If they could overload the reactor, the resulting explosion would eliminate the command ship and disrupt Korthak operations, long enough for the Cherokee to mount an effective counterattack. The reactor chamber was heavily guarded, but Lisa had brought Cherokee bioweapons that could neutralize Korthak soldiers without triggering security alarms. Susan Deer's modified organisms spread through the air filtration system, causing the guards to collapse unconscious while leaving no traces that would alert their replacements. Little Wolf began interfacing with the reactor's control systems using techniques that blended Cherokee biotechnology with his natural intuition for understanding complex machinery. The boy could see patterns in the energy flows that reminded him of the root networks beneath his home forest. He began redirecting power in ways the Korthak engineers had never imagined possible. Lisa monitored the ship's communication channels and heard something that made her heart leap with hope. The USS Frontier had arrived in the system and was broadcasting surrender demands to the Korthak fleet. Captain Roy Mitchell might not have enough firepower to win a direct confrontation, but his presence would complicate enemy plans and give the Cherokee additional time to organize their defenses. The Korthak fleet commander responded to the human ship's arrival by ordering an immediate assault on both the planet and the new threat from space. Lisa realized that her mission had become even more critical because the Frontier would be destroyed if she could not disable the enemy command structure quickly enough. Little Wolf completed his sabotage of the reactor systems and began the countdown sequence that would lead to a catastrophic overload in approximately 10 minutes. Lisa sent a coded message to the Frontier warning them to keep their distance while she and the boy made their escape from the doomed command ship. They reached the docking bay just as alarms began sounding throughout the Korthak vessel. Enemy soldiers were rushing to their stations while automated systems tried to determine the source of the reactor malfunction. Lisa and Little Wolf had minutes to reach safety before the explosion that would either save their world or accomplish nothing more than their own deaths. The shuttle they had stolen was surrounded by Korthak security forces who had finally realized that enemy agents were aboard their ship. Lisa used her plasma cutter to fight through the guards while Little Wolf activated Cherokee bioweapons that turned the docking bay's own systems against its defenders. Plants that had seemed like harmless decorations revealed themselves as carnivorous organisms that could move with frightening speed. They launched their shuttle just as the command ship's reactor began its final overload sequence. Lisa pushed the small vessel's engines beyond their design limits, trying to reach minimum safe distance before the explosion. Behind them, the massive Korthak ship was beginning to tear itself apart as runaway fusion reactions consumed its hull. The command ship's destruction sent shockwaves throughout the enemy fleet as secondary explosions destroyed nearby vessels and disrupted the coordination systems that kept the invasion force functioning as a unit. Individual Korthak captains began making their own decisions without central authority, and many chose to withdraw rather than continue a battle that no longer had clear objectives. Lisa established communication with the USS Frontier and learned that Captain Mitchell had brought reinforcements in the form of 3 more human vessels and a squadron of Cherokee ships from other hidden colonies. The Cherokee had revealed their existence to help defend the valley where Lisa had found her new family. The battle in space became a coordinated effort between human and Cherokee forces who shared targeting information and tactical data through biocommunication networks that the Korthak could not intercept. Lisa found herself serving as a translator between the two groups, helping them understand each other's capabilities and intentions. Little Wolf proved to be a natural pilot. Despite his youth, and soon was flying formation with veteran Cherokee warriors who had been fighting in space for decades. The boy's connection to living ships that responded to his thoughts gave him advantages that even experienced pilots could not match. Standing Bear's voice reached them through the Cherokee communication network, reporting that the mountain fortress was holding and that Korthak ground forces were beginning to retreat toward their remaining landing sites. The destruction of the command ship had broken the enemy's coordination and morale while revealing that their supposedly primitive opponents possessed weapons that could reach them even in orbit. The surviving Korthak vessels found themselves facing an alliance they had not expected between humans and Cherokee, who combined their strengths to overcome the Empire's technological advantages. Human ships provided heavy firepower, while Cherokee vessels used bioweapons and stealth capabilities to strike at vulnerable targets. Lisa piloted her captured shuttle back to the planet's surface to rejoin the ground battle that was still raging in scattered locations throughout the valley. She and Little Wolf landed near the mountain fortress where Standing Bear was, coordinating the final assault on Korthak positions. The Cherokee chief greeted them as returning heroes, but Lisa knew that the real victory belonged to the people who had accepted her into their tribe and taught her the meaning of courage. She had saved Little Wolf from a bear and gained the loyalty of the Cherokee nation, but they had given her something far more valuable in return. The combined human and Cherokee fleet drove the remaining Korthak ships from the system while ground forces eliminated the last enemy strongholds in the forest. The battle had been won through cooperation between two human cultures that had been separated by space and time, but found each other when it mattered. Most Mary Crow worked without rest to treat the wounded from both species, using medical techniques that combined the best of human science and Cherokee bioengineering. Her healing center became a symbol of the unity that had made victory possible as humans and Cherokee worked together to save lives regardless of which world they called home. The war was over, but Lisa knew that the real work of building a lasting alliance between her two peoples was just beginning. She had helped save the Cherokee Valley, but now she had to help both civilizations learn to trust each other enough to face whatever challenges the galaxy might bring in the future. Standing Bear asked Lisa to serve as the official ambassador between the human and Cherokee peoples because she understood both cultures and had earned the respect of warriors from two worlds. It was a responsibility that would define the rest of her life and shape the destiny of both species. Little Wolf stood beside her as they watched human and Cherokee ships patrol the skies above their valley. The boy who had been saved from a bear by a stranger from the stars had become the bridge between two civilizations. His courage and curiosity would help ensure that the alliance forged in battle would grow into something that could benefit all humanity. 6 months after the battle that saved the Cherokee Valley, Lisa stood on the observation deck of the new research station that had been built where her shuttle first crashed. The facility was a perfect blend of human engineering and Cherokee bioarchitecture, with living walls that breathed and grew stronger over time. Through the transparent aluminum windows, she could see human and Cherokee children playing together in gardens where alien and earth plants flourished side by side. The Cherokee world had been officially designated New Katua in honor of the ancient Cherokee capital on Earth. The name carried deep meaning for both peoples, representing the continuity of culture across space and time. Lisa had suggested the name during the first formal meeting between Cherokee leaders and human diplomats, and it had been accepted unanimously. Captain Roy Mitchell had remained in the system to oversee the establishment of formal relations between the United Earth Alliance and the Cherokee Nation. The human military officer had developed a deep respect for Cherokee wisdom and had adopted several of their tactical innovations for use by human forces. His ship, the USS Frontier, now carried bioweapons alongside conventional armaments. Little Wolf had grown several inches taller and had begun training as a pilot for the joint exploration missions that were being planned to search for other lost human colonies throughout the galaxy. The boy who had once been saved from a bear by a stranger was now learning to fly ships that could travel between stars. His natural ability to interface with both human and Cherokee technology made him invaluable to the new alliance. Standing, Bear had been elected as the first Cherokee representative to the United Earth Council, giving his people a voice in decisions that affected all humanity. The elderly chief had adapted quickly to interstellar politics, but he never forgot the lessons learned during the defense of his valley. Peace was precious, but it could only be preserved by those willing to fight for it. Mary Crow had established a medical exchange program that allowed human doctors to learn Cherokee biohealing techniques while teaching alien physicians about human anatomy and psychology. Her work was saving lives throughout the alliance and had led to breakthrough treatments for diseases that had plagued both species for generations. Jack Hawk had been promoted to colonel and given command of the Joint Cherokee Human Defense Forces, responsible for protecting New Katua from future threats. His initial suspicion of Lisa had transformed into deep respect and friendship. The warrior who had once questioned her loyalty now trusted her with his people's most important secrets. Peter Raven and Susan Deere had become the leading researchers in biotechnology development, working with human scientists to create new applications for Cherokee organic engineering. Their discoveries were revolutionizing everything from space travel to planetary terraforming. Susan had grown into a brilliant young woman whose innovations bridged the gap between biology and technology. Colonel Stone Wolf had survived his wounds from the battle and had established a training academy where human and Cherokee warriors learned to fight together, using combined tactics that were more effective than either group could achieve alone. Veterans from both species shared their knowledge, creating a new generation of soldiers who understood the strength that came from diversity. Lisa walked through the research station's corridors, observing the daily miracle of two civilizations learning to work together. Human engineers consulted with Cherokee biotechnicians, while alien botanists studied earth plants that had been brought to New Katua. The barriers between species were dissolving as people focused on shared goals rather than their differences. The dining hall was filled with the sounds of laughter and conversation in multiple languages as researchers from both worlds shared meals and ideas. Lisa had established translation protocols that allowed real-time communication, but she noticed that many people were learning each other's languages naturally through daily interaction. Little Wolf found Lisa in her office reviewing reports from the exploration teams that were searching nearby star systems for signs of other Cherokee colonies or human settlements. The boy had become her unofficial assistant and had developed an intuitive understanding of interstellar politics that impressed veteran diplomats. He brought news that a Cherokee colony ship had been detected 3 systems away, using the biocommunication networks that connected all Cherokee settlements. The ship had been drifting for decades after its navigation systems failed, but the Ice-Dio crew was still alive thanks to Cherokee biotechnology that could sustain life indefinitely. Lisa immediately began organizing a rescue mission that would combine human faster-than-light travel with Cherokee biosupport systems. The operation would require unprecedented cooperation between both species, but she was confident it would succeed. The alliance had grown strong enough to handle complex challenges that would have been impossible for either group alone. Standing Bear arrived at the research station for his monthly visit, bringing gifts from the village and news of developments throughout Cherokee space. The chief had aged visibly during his months of diplomatic service, but his eyes still held the wisdom and strength that had saved his people during their darkest hour. He told Lisa about the memorial they were building to honor all those who had died defending New Katua from the Korthak invasion. The monument would include names from both human and Cherokee casualties because the battle had been won through shared sacrifice. No one would be forgotten regardless of which world they had called home. The Cherokee Council had voted to share their most advanced biotechnologies with human scientists in exchange for access to human industrial capabilities and faster-than-light communication systems. The technology transfer was creating innovations that neither species could have achieved independently. Lisa reflected on the chain of events that had brought her to this moment as she prepared her daily report for Earth Command. She had crashed on an alien world while conducting a routine survey mission and had saved a Cherokee boy from a bear attack. That single act of courage had set in motion changes that were reshaping human civilization. The boy she had saved was now a young man who served as a symbol of the alliance between two branches of humanity that had been separated by centuries and light years. Little Wolf called her bear sister in Cherokee, and the name had been adopted by children throughout the alliance. She was no longer just Dr. Lisa Morrison, the xenobiologist, but bear sister, the bridge between worlds. The research station's communication array activated with an incoming message from the Cherokee colony ship that had been located in the neighboring system. The transmission was weak, but clear enough to understand that the colonists were eager to join the growing alliance and contribute their own knowledge to the shared effort. Lisa authorized the immediate deployment of rescue ships carrying supplies and technical support for the stranded colonists. Within hours, vessels from both species were racing toward the distant system, carrying hope to people who had given up expecting rescue. The alliance was growing stronger with each successful mission. Evening came to New Katua, with the spectacular sunset that painted the alien sky in shades of purple and gold. Lisa stood on her balcony watching human and Cherokee families walk through the gardens below, while their children played games that combined traditions from both worlds. Little Wolf joined her on the balcony, carrying 2 cups of the herbal tea that Mary Crow had developed using plants from both Earth and New Katua. The blend had become popular throughout the research station because it seemed to promote understanding and friendship between different species. They stood in comfortable silence watching the stars appear overhead as darkness fell across the valley where Lisa had first found her Cherokee family. Many of those stars now harbored human or Cherokee colonies that were part of the growing alliance. The galaxy seemed smaller and less lonely than it had before the two peoples had found each other. Lisa thought about the future that was taking shape as human and Cherokee civilizations learned to work together. There would be challenges and setbacks because building trust between different cultures was never easy. But she had faith that the alliance would survive and grow because it was founded on the same principles that had made her rescue of Little Wolf possible. Courage, compassion, and the willingness to help others regardless of their differences were the foundation stones of the new civilization that was emerging from the partnership between Earth humans and their Cherokee cousins. Lisa had gained the loyalty of an entire tribe by saving one boy from a bear, but that loyalty had grown into something that would benefit all humanity. The research station's lights twinkled like earthbound stars as people from 2 worlds worked together to build a future that was brighter than either could have achieved alone. Lisa Morrison had come to New Katua as a stranger and a scientist, but she would remain as bear sister, the woman who had helped unite the scattered children of Earth under distant suns. The galaxy was vast and full of wonders waiting to be discovered by the alliance of humans and Cherokee, who had learned that their greatest strength lay not in their technology or weapons, but in their willingness to stand together against any challenge that threatened their shared home among the stars.